The plains stretched wide and unforgiving, a sea of dust and dead grass rolling beneath a pale, burned-out sky. Wind dragged itself across the land like a tired animal, rattling fence wire and whispering through sagebrush. Somewhere far off, a hawk circled, patient, waiting for something to die. This was country that remembered every sin ever committed on it, and it never forgot a man who tried to run from his past. He rode alone. The gunslinger sat heavy in the saddle, shoulders stiff, hat pulled low, the brim cutting his eyes from the sun. His horse moved steady, hooves thudding a slow, deliberate rhythm into the dirt, as if even the animal understood where they were headed. The man's coat was worn thin, dust-stained and faded by years of hard miles. A scar cut down his cheek, pale against sun-darkened skin, a reminder of violence that never truly left him. His name was Eli Mercer. Once men whispered it in saloons with fear and admiration. Once it meant something. Now it tasted like rust in his mouth. He hadn't planned to come back. No man ever does. The ranch appeared on the horizon like a ghost from another life. Low buildings crouched against the wind, weather-beaten and tired. Corrals sagged under their own weight. A windmill creaked, blades turning slow, screaming softly with each rotation. Eli reined in his horse and stared, chest tightening. This land had been hers once. This land had been his, too, before he ruined it. He could still see her in his mind. Clara, standing on that porch years ago, belly round with a child that should have been his reason to stay. Her eyes had begged him without words. She hadn't cried. That hurt worse. She had known who he was. She had known he'd leave. And he had. Eli spat into the dust and swung down from the saddle. The boards of the porch groaned beneath his boots, like they recognized him. The door stood open. That was never a good sign on the frontier. Inside, the ranch house smelled of old wood, cold ashes and something sour underneath. A chair lay overturned. A plate shattered on the floor. Eli's hand drifted toward the Colt at his hip without thinking. Instinct like a buried blade. "Clara," he called. No answer. The silence pressed in on him, thick and dangerous. He moved room to room, slow, controlled. A bedroom empty, a child's room, small, simple. A handmade doll lay on the bed, one button eye missing. Eli froze. A child. His child. The truth hit him harder than any bullet ever had. He gripped the bedpost, knuckles whitening. He had told himself lies for years, told himself Clara would move on, that the child would be better off without him. But standing there, staring at proof of a life he abandoned, the lies collapsed. Outside, voices. Men rough laughing. Eli moved to the window and looked out. Through a crack in the wall. 3 riders had pulled into the yard. Their horses bore fresh brands, snakeheads coiled in iron. Eli recognized the mark. The Rattler gang, slavers, thieves, worse than killers, because they left people breathing when they were done. One of them dismounted, tall and broad, rifle slung over his shoulder. Another dragged something behind him. A girl, small, struggling. Eli's breath stopped. She couldn't be more than 12. Her hair was dark like Clara's, her face dirty, bruised. But her eyes, those eyes were his. He knew it in his bones, the way they burned with fear and defiance at the same time. His daughter, the sin he had buried, had grown into flesh and blood. The men shoved her toward the corral, binding her wrists. She fought them, kicking, biting, drawing laughter instead of mercy. The tall one backhanded her hard enough to send her to the ground. Something broke loose inside Eli Mercer. He didn't rush out. He didn't shout. Gunslingers who lived long didn't act on rage alone. He breathed, slow, counted heartbeats. Then he stepped onto the porch. The men turned. Recognition flickered in the tall one's eyes. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Ain't you supposed to be dead, Mercer?" Eli's voice came out low and steady. "Let the girl go." The men laughed. One of them spat. "This ain't your land anymore." Eli nodded. "Never was." His hand moved. The world snapped into violence. 2 shots rang out like thunder cracking the sky. One man fell backward into the dirt, dead before he hit the ground. Another screamed, clutching his leg. The tall one dove for cover, firing wild. Eli advanced, boots kicking dust, heart cold and clear. He shot again. Silence followed. The girl stared at him, shaking. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Eli holstered his gun and cut her loose. She didn't thank him. She stepped back, eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" The question hurt more than any wound. Eli swallowed. A man who made a mistake. She studied him like she didn't trust the ground beneath her. Feet, smart, Clara's daughter, no doubt. Before he could say more, hoofbeats thundered in the distance. More riders, more trouble. The past had found him, and it wasn't done collecting its debt. Eli looked at the girl, at the fear and fire in her eyes, and knew one thing for certain. Leaving had been his greatest sin. Coming back would cost him everything. The riders came fast. Dust rose on the horizon in thick, boiling clouds, the kind that swallowed men whole. Eli Mercer stood in the yard with a gun in his hand and his daughter at his back, the weight of a choice pressing down on him, heavier than any rifle. Running had always been his answer. It was the only thing he'd ever been good at besides killing. But the girl, his girl, was watching him. "Get inside," he said. She didn't move. "They'll find us." He nodded. "That's why we don't wait." They mounted up fast. Eli swung her onto the saddle in front of him, his hands steady, even as something unfamiliar twisted in his chest. He'd never held her like this before, never protected her. The horse lurched forward, and the ranch vanished behind them, swallowed by dust and memory. They rode hard across the plains, wind tearing at their clothes, the sun hanging low and merciless. Bullets snapped past them, one grazing Eli's arm. He didn't slow. He couldn't, not now. They reached a shallow ravine just as the light began to bleed red across the sky. Eli slid from the saddle and pulled the girl down with him, dragging her behind a rise of stone. "Stay low," he said. She stared at the blood soaking his sleeve. "You're hurt." "Doesn't matter." She shook her head. "You always say that, don't you?" The words struck him harder than the bullet. He wondered how much she already knew, how much Clara had told her, how much silence had filled the gaps he left behind. The riders fanned out, spreading like wolves. Eli counted them, too many. He checked his ammunition and felt the weight of every shot he'd ever fired pressing into his bones. A gunfight erupted like a storm. Eli moved with grim purpose, firing, reloading, ducking behind stone. One rider fell, then another. But for every man he dropped, two more seemed to rise from the dust. The girl crawled closer, terror in her eyes, but steel beneath it. "You're not leaving again," she said. He met her gaze. No, he meant it. A figure appeared through the smoke, a woman on horseback, rifle raised. She fired clean and fast, dropping a man who'd been closing in. Eli stared in disbelief. Sarah Caldwell. She rode closer, reins tight, eyes sharp beneath her hat. Once long ago she'd loved him, or something close enough to scare him into leaving. "You look like hell, Mercer," she said. He gave a grim smile. "You always did have bad timing." Together, they fought like old ghosts who remembered how to survive. But even Sarah knew the truth when she saw it in Eli's eyes. "This isn't going to end here," she said. Eli looked at the girl, then back at the approaching riders. The plains were closing in. Blood stained the dust. The wind carried the sound of more hooves. The war had begun,